Hello and welcome to the LFC Transfer Room stream. Today we're going to be previewing the Ajax versus Liverpool match scheduled for tomorrow. It's a match week 5 out of 6 as the our mighty Reds look to cement their place into the Champions League group, into the Champions League knockout stages. I'm Rigo. Today I'm joined by Dan and Richie. Welcome to both of you. I'll go down to you, Richie. How are you doing today, sir?
Yep, very well, thank you. Considering the weekend's results still taking a toll on us, probably. Less said about it, the better. Looking forward to tomorrow night and hopefully putting a few wrongs right.
Definitely. How about you, Dan? How's it going on your end there?
Wonderful as always. I feel like every single time someone asks me this, I say wonderful. But yeah, we're doing great. Pretty busy morning, but I'm excited to start talking on what's going on behind the whole Liverpool squad.
Definitely. Well, wonderful. Definitely much better than the opposite of that. So I'm glad you're doing well. So definitely, we're looking forward to tomorrow's match. It's over there in the Netherlands at Johan Cruyff Arena. It's an away match for our Reds. Just to give you a little preview there, Spanish referee Jose Maria Sanchez Martinez is scheduled to be the ref. And as we all know, we're dealing with a couple of injury bugs there. And kind of previewing the lineup that we're set to place out there tomorrow. What do you think, Dan? Do you think there'll be some switches over from the weekend's match?
Absolutely. I am excited to see, hopefully, Ibrahim Konate back in action. We saw him in training, and I believe, or am I wrong, that he is in the Champions League squad, the list. He is,
Yep,
right? He should be good.
Yeah, definitely.
It's been a few days now since he was injured, and it seems like he's back in full training. Same with Naby Keita. In fact, there's some rumors going around in league lineup saying that he will be starting next to Van Dijk. Of course, we will not know yet, but that will be wonderful, mainly because obviously we have not been as happy with Joe Gomez's performances lately at center back. Maybe there's one or two that we were okay with, but there's been a lot of inconsistencies. A lot of people tend to like him as a right back because obviously we have more defensive cover there. But I'm just glad that we're finally going to see Ibrahim Konate back in action if we actually even see him. Same with Naby Keita, although Rico, you did mention it before we started recording. He is not in the Champions League squad, at least not until January, I believe, where we can resend the list. So we won't see him yet there, but maybe in the Premier League. Naby Keita will be back. The most notable, Darwin Núñez, who looks like he's finally fine now. So I'll let Richie take it away now because he does need to talk about Thiago, who's still missing from training.
Yeah, Thiago obviously had an ear infection at I think 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning, and obviously pulled out the squad then. And you certainly saw it when Thiago doesn't play. Liverpool look completely broken, if I'm honest, half of the time. There's no creativity in that midfield. Mm-hmm. It also feels like there's no control in that midfield. I don't know whether it's Thiago's influence or whether it's just his positioning, but we saw, a somewhat double pivot of Jones and Fabinho, and I know that isn't really Jones's natural position, but it certainly is Fabinho's, and he looked lost without Thiago next to him. I think he looked a little steadier when Henderson came on, but again, there should be a time where we don't have to rely on the likes of Fabinho and Henderson and even Thiago, who's the other side of 30 now, trying to push on this Liverpool team. So Thiago is a massive miss, and a lot of people say, well, what does Thiago do? He doesn't score and he doesn't assist and he doesn't get these numbers up. He controls the game. That's what he does. He controls Liverpool's midfield. That's what he's always done. That's what a maestro does. I'm not sure whether he'll be fit or not. It depends on ear infections are quite horrible. Hopefully after a couple of days of antibiotics, he'll be okay. But I think he was the biggest miss. I know that we missed Darwin Núñez's potency up front in attack, just his direct, attitude towards the defenders, because Salah looked a little bit lost at times. He was essentially having two central defenders on him, and he didn't move as well as what Núñez would. So I'm certainly looking forward to hopefully seeing Núñez as well. We obviously had a hamstring injury there as well, but something needs to change, because if we go in away from home at Ajax in an absolute dome, an absolute arena where Ajax have to win, remember, Ajax have to win. Liverpool just need a point. Liverpool just need a point. So it's going to be an absolute cauldron. We're going to have to be on our best, to beat them. And we wasn't at our best last time, and we still did manage to beat them, but that was with the Anfield crowd behind us.
And the late Joel Matip header there, it almost looked like we were just going to sneak away with a draw there at Anfield. You bring up a good point there as far as Thiago is concerned. Definitely, we looked out of it. There was no connection between the midfield and the forward players. And as we all saw, Salah was basically marked out of the game. He had completed only 4 passes the last match and basically looked marked out of the game. He went down with what looked like a potentially serious injury there, kind of grasping at his back or his buttocks there for quite a while there. I know we were all a little bit anxiously waiting for him to get up. He's not one to stay on the floor for that long. So hopefully it's not something that's going to affect them in the short term or long term. But going back to that midfield pairing, I know it's a pretty big point of contention. I know with all the injuries that we've had, it's kind of hard to throw out a lineup out there. But considering this weekend's results, which midfield pairing would you go with? Kind of leaning towards Thiago not being available there. I'll throw it over to you, Dan.
So there's the obvious options, which obviously is Fabinho and Henderson. And obviously, I think there's really nothing else we could say, because you cannot put Jones there, you cannot put Elliott there, because you're forcing these two players to play defensively. Which one, I do believe that they can, but two, every single time that they do, they get judged about it because they're not perfect. Which is obviously, when you're at Liverpool, you need to play perfectly, yes, but people forget many times that these are young players, of course, and then they're not used to playing this defensive midfield position or the 6th position, whatever it is. So there's only 2 options that can start in the middle if Thiago is not playing, and that's Fabinho and Henderson. Now, I do expect Elliott and Jones to make an appearance, whether that's in the starting 11 or as a substitution, but more in the forward options as a winger, both of them. So we'll see. But yeah, there's nothing else that you can say other than just having Henderson and Fabinho, which obviously gets me a little worried because none of them have been really playing to their best.
Would you go along with that same pairing there, Richie, considering what we have to work with at this point?
Yeah, I probably would. And the biggest ask for me is not just that midfield. Who plays out on the left? Because it's okay playing, that double pivot and then hopefully Fabinho in a 10, not up front next to Nunez, but just behind him. I think Nunez works far better if he's on there on his own and he can play off the shoulder of the last defender, and Bobby does bits, linking, that double pivot up with everybody else. But who plays on the left? Because that's tricky, because Jones nor Carvalho, whilst they're good players, they don't have the pace to play out on the left. Salah obviously can't play there. There's no point in putting him out there. And if Nunez is going up front, you don't want Firmino on the left. So I know that Nunez has played on the left for Uruguay a couple of times. So that might be an option to look at. Salah through the middle, perhaps Elliott on the right and Firmino as a 10. I think that left side is going to be quite key actually for Liverpool tomorrow night, because like I say, who does play there? And if it does go with Carvalho, then that means Salah on the right, Firmino, Nunez, Elliott drops out, and Elliott's perhaps been our most creative player. So hey Jen, how's it going? So Elliott dropping out I don't think would be fair, because he has been our most creative, but at this point it might be needs must. So it'll be really interesting to see on that left-hand side, as well as who starts over Tsimikas and Robertson. I don't think Tsimikas has taken his chance, but I also don't think that Robbo's been peak Robbo for a while now as well. So, it'll be a really interesting squad selection tomorrow. We might just have a massive overhaul. We might see James Milner out on the left. We might just see something wild from Klopp, because he knows that all he needs a point.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a lot of shuffling in and out these past few weeks. From one match to the other, there's been around 4 to 5 changes in each lineup, and either as a result of trying to keep guys fresh or as a result of just guys being out, and unfortunately having to do that reshuffle. That left side that you did bring up, Richie, is a point that we kind of need to solve. As you mentioned, Carvalho and Elliott both don't. Carvalho and Jones don't have that same pace that a Diaz would, or even a Jota would on that left-hand side. So I definitely think that Nunez needs to start in order to open up some space for them at least to carry the ball forward and create some chances there. Without without that pace of Nunez, I think we were severely lacking in creating space and giving any room for our creative players to do their thing. But going forward to on that Elliott point, he's been playing a lot. And I know in our own group chats, we've kind of brought up that own concern as far as when is playing him too much. It feels like we've run all of our players into the ground. So at this point, would you look to give him a blow perhaps in the Champions League matchup and keep him safe for the weekend, or just keep him going?
Before we touch on that, I want to say, nobody told me about the overlay. We had the podcast overlay for the whole time. This is just a Champions League preview. I think is because I finally have Richie back on, which, by the way, I told you guys, we will be having Richie eventually on streams, and we're so happy for it. But we're back now with the overlay now. Where have we been? We've been taking a couple of days off. It's been like 2-3 days off that we took. We're still arranging this new setup. We're working on bringing new members, having different setup as far as organizing the video schedule. So be patient with us, guys. Give us a couple more days. We should be back to our best. And you're gonna see this beautiful face more often. Of course, you've seen Rigo on podcasts, on streams, on different videos. So get used to it. Anyways,
we should just be honest. We were all just really hungover after that Saturday match and just couldn't bear with going on the stream. And we were just all going through all sorts of emotions. And up until today, we didn't recover. At least for me. I don't know about you guys, but I was just in a state of absolute depression after that match on Saturday.
I was telling everybody, you guys, like, this club is gonna get me in depression too, man. Every single time I watch this, but at least it's good that we see the hopeful signs here and there. Sometimes, of course, we're having bad performances, but at least when we face Forest, there were chances there. So we just need someone to finish them off, and that's where Darwin is finally back. So Kate is finally back as well. We were mentioning the fact that he will be bringing something new to the squad as soon as he's back as well, a few streams back. But back on the Elliott point, I'm sorry we got all over the place, and we also need to answer some comments. Harvey Elliott, for me, has been doing wonderful. I think he needs to keep starting and playing matches until Luis Diaz is back, Jota is back, you name it. He's showing such a maturity level, and you do not understand how mad I get every single time I'm on Twitter and people say, Elliott is not up to standard, Elliott is not up to standard. I was telling a lot of people the other day, in a normal day, a 19-year-old midfielder that plays at Liverpool will be playing for the U23s. So it's not Elliott's fault that he's just so good that he's forced to play for the starting 11, So it's obviously the manager's decision at the end of the day. And Elliott's just so good that he managed to get in the first team. And whether you like his performances or not, he's showing a level that not every 19-year-old will do. So I'm happy to see him. I see promising signs there, and I want to keep seeing him over and over again. Jones, we do have to consider that he just got back from an injury a few weeks back. I don't want to be too harsh on him. I want to hear your takes. I want to hear your takes on Jones and Carvalho. Richie, what are your takes on those two?
Both the same. What is their position? I think that they're both playing out of position at the moment. Carvalho last season absolutely fed Mitrovic like he was serving him dinner all day, because he fed Mitrovic so many of those assists, and he played just behind him. But it wasn't just the assists, and it wasn't just the goals. I think he scored a couple of goals too. It was the space that he created for Mitrovic to move into, and for me, that's so important. That's what a player like Nunez needs. So I do tend to think that Carvalho is a 10. We've seen his attacking prowess when he comes in. He's so instinctive. We saw the goal against Newcastle. We saw, what he can do on the balls every time he's on the ball. So, he is instinctive. He is an attacker. And I think he is. I generally think he's a 10. But at the moment, you can't take Bobby out of the team, because he's probably, apart from Alisson Becker and Harvey Elliott and Diaz before his unfortunate injury, Bobby's the one who's been banging in the goals and perhaps been one of our better players, if not the best player, as I mentioned. So it's difficult for Carvalho to get in there in that 10. And we've only really just started playing that double pivot. Jones, the same. He's been playing as a 6. He's played at an 8. He's played as a left winger. He's played at a 10. Jones doesn't seem to have a solid position in that team. I personally don't think he's fast enough to be a winger. We saw that at the weekend. he had to go past a man twice to beat him. You know, most wingers go past them once and they're dust. Jones had to actually cut back and then go past someone again. And as beautiful as it looked, that's why he can't necessarily be a winger. He's not quick, same as Carvalho. So that leaves Jones in a little bit of a difficult position as well, because if he's a midfielder or a 10, again, he's not had that opportunity, I don't think, as a 10, because again, we've just started playing the double pivot, but he's not really taken his opportunity in midfield either. I think it's harsh for him to play as a 6, you know, alongside Fabinho, because that's clearly not his game. I think with Jones, it's one of those that he needs to find his position pretty quick. Otherwise, he might be finding himself out the door, which pains me to say. He's too slow, as Jen says. He's not just pace is too slow. Sometimes he holds the ball a little bit too quick too. When you see Elliott release and go, that's what Jones used to do. You know, Jones in his pomp a couple of seasons ago was absolutely on fire because that's what he did. He hesitates a little bit, and whether that's a confidence thing, it's certainly a match sharpness thing, because the more games he plays, the more consistent he will be. Like anything, you just do things naturally. Yeah, the quicker, because you're naturally, you know where the players are, but if you're not playing alongside those players, you don't know where they are. So it's a really good question, because I think they're both out of position. I think it's really unfair to stick them on the left wing and think that they're going to register Diaz and Jota numbers or Sadio Mane numbers, because they're not those types of players at all. So yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it's one unfortunately I don't think anyone has an answer to.
Is Jones still a youngster? How old is Jones?
I mean, it depends what you class as young, because people say Jesse Lingard is still young. Jesse Lingard's still a youngster.
Let me see.
But yeah, he's about 22, 23, is he? Maybe 24?
Let's see. It says Curtis Jones.
It's 22.
22, yeah.
It's not bad, right? I mean, that's not a bad age.
He's still a young player, and obviously doesn't have as much of the experience as some other young players. I definitely think talent is there, but as Richard, you alluded to, it's kind of talent, but where do we fit in that talent? And I don't think they have a position suited for them currently in our setup. And it's quite unfair, unfortunately, due to poor planning and or injury, that we're relying on these players to carry so much of that weight. On the weekend, Jones seemed the most comfortable on the ball and did a fairly good job, even though he wasn't able to break down the defense, et cetera, et cetera. He did complete over 90% of his passes, had quite a few amount of recoveries there as well, and generally took care of the ball. But again, having to rely on a player who's just coming back from injury to provide some punch in the midfield and get us going is a little bit too much to ask at that point. Same with Fabio Carvalho and Harvey Elliott. Harvey being 19, he shouldn't look like the most veteran and most poised midfielder that we have on the pitch there, and certainly not the one trying the hardest, because that example should be led by the older players in the group, unfortunately. And I think that's what I was going
to bring up. Like he looked the most hungry.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, he looked the one with the drive and the desire.
He's just a try-hard on the field, and you just see that it's just a complete effort player. And the same thing with Luis Diaz when he's available. He's just every single minute he's trying to do the most. And unfortunately, these players are put in that position where we're counting on them that much, and then when the players who are the veterans, who are the stalwarts, aren't performing to their capabilities, it kind of just that house unfortunately crumbles down. But
do you guys? Oh, actually, before I even touch on this point, let me just thank Jen as well. Jen, we came back, and Jane is also back. Jen, we love you as always. Thank you so much. And she said that she was worried. Thank you so much for always sticking with the LFC Transfer Room family here. Do you guys think that it's just a matter of age? Because you guys know that Liverpool do have one of the oldest squads in the Premier League, right? So don't you think it's just like most older players are just pretty okay with their position? They played enough, they won it all. So then you bring the likes of Carvalho, of Elliott, of Diogo Jota, of Luis Diaz, and they're working their socks off to get a starting spot. Should we just start bringing more fresh blood to the squad, or do you think it's just a matter of Elliott is trying his best to get in the starting 11?
Do you want to go first, Rigo, or do you want me?
Yeah, I think it's, and again, you know, we've touched on this plenty of times, and it's like daily discussion on our end. I just feel that we haven't properly recruited in these past few seasons in order to get that fresh blood going and betting these players in to eventually replace the players that are kind of aging out. At this point, we should have already identified a potential successor to Henderson, potential successor to Fabinho, Thiago, and certainly some talent there on the wings as well, where we're lacking. That's why we're kind of forced to play Jones or Cavallo on the wings, because we don't have those pacey players in that age range of 23 to 27, where right before they're hitting their absolute prime, they're ready to explode. I think that's where we're kind of missing in our squad. We have those 30 and over, and then we did bring in this young, fresh blood in 19-year-olds in Harvey Elliott, Fabio Carvalho, Ramsey, if he ever does make an appearance with the senior squad. And that kind of brings our age down. But again, we're missing that big chunk right in the middle of those players primed to take over and have those fresh legs to carry, namely our midfield forward.
In terms of age, Mo Shatra, by the way, on Twitter, friend of the podcast, friend of the show, really, really great. I'd recommend going to have a look at him. Breaks down the Liverpool finances really well. But he said something really interesting. He said, Liverpool started this season with 10, now 11 players over the age of 30. And Manchester City had an aging squad last season when they won the league with 5. And they were classed to have an aging squad with 5. But what Manchester City do, and they won the league, by the way, just in case anyone needs reminding by a point, but it is what it is. Man City, what they do really well is they move out the likes of Aguero and getting Jack Grealish. They move out Sterling and getting Haaland. They move their players on, unless it's a Fernandinho type role, which they essentially scale Fernandinho's role down. We only saw him as a bit part player, as a cameo appearance when they really needed him. That's what Henderson should be doing now. That's what Milner should be doing now. And yes, we've got injuries, but Manchester City don't stand still. And I know that they've got an oligarch and they're funded with their billions. But let's take Manchester United then 20 years ago when the money wasn't what it was. Manchester United did exactly the same thing. You know, the great clubs will always have a dynasty. But Barcelona, Real Madrid, again, they just recycle these players and they sell them. Yeah, they sell them. Maybe I thought when Sterling went actually to Chelsea, I thought that Chelsea got a really good deal. You know, it's now looking like an absolute steal from Man City's point of view. Especially when you factor in how much Haaland or how little release fee I know was. But at the same time, Liverpool do have too many players, and it's not the issue of having too many over 30s. It's having to rely on these players to play a very intense gegenpressing system, heavy metal football that they've played in the past 6 years. You know, I'm not surprised that Henderson's not got the legs anymore, because you run for 6 years non-stop and still try to do it, you know? So it's not a surprise that the likes of Jota, Elliott, Diaz, Nunez, that they are the runners, because they've got the younger legs. They haven't ran for 6 years. You know, we've still got these players that we started with in Klopp, and that's not a bad thing, but it is if you're continuing to rely on them over and over again. So the club, I think all of us are saying, missed a massive trick here. And we should have reinvested. And yes, you can say that Bellingham wasn't available. There's more midfielders, surely, than Jude Bellingham. We could say that Tchouameni, you know, didn't come. Yes, fine. But again, Salah was third choice, and he still turned out pretty okay. Sadio Mane was second or third. Fabinho was second or third, behind Jorginho, I believe. So, you know, we have, I think, Mr. Trick. I think we've also been extremely unfortunate with injuries. You know, we've never, apart from the flipping defensive crisis of a couple of years ago, we've never really seen so many players be injured so often.
We are facing a similar issue, than a similar extent of injury crisis than we had when we had the defensive issues. The only difference now is that we're having them all over the place. But if you put them together, and like in the list, it's basically the same thing. So it's the same, like Richie's saying. It's a crisis.
Yeah,
I mean, we've had 19 players from the starting squad missing matches due to injury. So basically, only 10 players have not missed a match this season due to injury from the senior squad. And that's just, you know, it's hard to build, you know, get on a winning streak, get things going successfully when you have so much interchanging parts there and so many top talents going down. For 3 successive weeks, we've gone from Luis Diaz going down against Arsenal, Diogo Jota against Man City. Midweek, you know, Darwin Nunez picked up a knock against West Ham that prevented him from playing against Forest at the weekend. So it's just a mashup of players, and to kind of expect them to perform the game plan that you've kind of laid out when you have all this talent at your disposal, also I think is kind of leading us kind of to hit our head against the wall. And that kind of goes back to the question of, as far as tactics are concerned, should we be a little bit more realistic as to who we do have available and perhaps play a more conservative type of football?
Neil just earlier made a really good point about Jones as well. Like, we do expect Jones to just be thrown in and be okay, but he did miss 10 weeks, and yes, he did get criticism. I think Jones is a player who does get over the top criticism, and I'm not saying he can't be criticized, but he does seem to, like, if he has a bad game, it's 10 times as bad as Fabinho having a bad game. And maybe that's because Fabinho's earned that right to actually give him a bit of stick, and a bit of slack as well, maybe. But at the same time, we are expecting these players to come back in because there's no one else and just to hit the ground running. When Naby Keita comes back, I'm sure we'll be saying the same. Oxlade-Chamberlain, I don't know what the point of bringing him on the other day, but again, like, that's our issue, isn't it? Like, what's Ox going to do? Because he's not
furious when he played that ball right to the keeper, and you were like, "What are you doing?" Ox?
Yeah, but then I shouldn't, because he's been out for such a long time, and he was thrown in when we needed a point and we're desperate, and he tried to create something, and obviously it didn't come off. But these players are basically getting thrown in straight away because we do have a crisis, and that does come from not having a fit enough squad, because those lads are definitely fit, but there's something obviously inherently wrong at the moment with the way in which we're setting up. Maybe it's everyone plays this up. I know that we had like a 61 game season, but so did Man City the year before they won the league. But the difference is Man City, and I know that we keep on saying about it, they could bring Sterling off and put on Mahrez. That's the difference. We bring off Salah, and that's the drop-off. And these players have to play because we don't have the billions and billions of pounds that Manchester City does. So there has to be almost a breaking point at some point. I'm really looking forward to, in 3 weeks' time, when Premier League football ceases, and hopefully our lads can just recover 2 months of R&R or whatever it is, and a month maybe of R&R before Boxing Day, and then hit the ground running again. But it's going to be difficult. They've not really had a break for 2 years.
Yeah, pretty much like four or five, except for when we had that respite with the pandemic and football taking a break for a few weeks, months.
And then they came in and had to do everything. Yeah, and then they had to come in, catch up on all of those games. Then they had to play Euros to catch up, and then they've had to play so many games this season because of a stupid World Cup in Qatar happening at flipping Christmas time. So, it's just going to get worse at the moment. I think this summer, people just need to go no football for like 2 months. No, don't want to see you for 2 months. Don't kick a ball, mate, for 2 months, because that's what it's going to take for them to get back to their best.
Yeah, we should also touch on the recruitment and how many players we need. And I would like to hear you guys out on this, because I made a post on Twitter the other day, which blew up for some reason, where I said that Liverpool need 2 forwards, 3 midfielders, and 1 defender, and they need to get rid of at least 6 players. And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, but we do not need any forwards. We just need like injuries to not be against us and whatnot." But if you think about it, if we keep playing under this 4-4-2 system or 4-2-4, whatever you want to look at it, what happens when one of your wingers gets injured? Assuming that Jota, Luis Diaz, Salah, and Nunez all start, what happens when one of your wingers gets injured? We have no wingers at all. And yes, you can argue the fact that Elliott and Carvalho could play on the wing, but that's just a midfielder that is able to play as a winger. We have no wingers. There's no more winger options. If someone gets injured on the right, there's no wingers. Somebody gets injured on their left, there's no wingers. So we either are forced into playing a midfielder there, or we're forced into playing a different formation, which is obviously the fact that I do think that is on FSG or club's hands, or whoever you want to look at, that we didn't recruit 2 new forwards after getting rid of Minamino, Sadio Mane, Origi. I mean, what were we thinking? We just brought 1 forward, 1 frontline forward, if you don't take into consideration Carvalho. I just think I want to hear you guys out. How many players do you think we need up front? Am I crazy to think that we need at least 2 forwards, Rigo?
Depends what transfer window you're thinking of. If we're looking at just the immediate one in January, I think definitely at least one winger and 1 to 2 possible midfielders to bring in just to secure our top 4 in the Premier League and hopefully make a run into the Champions League. If you're looking summer 2023, then definitely I'm in agreement with you there, Dan. We're going to have quite a few players running out their contracts there. So, but naturally we're going to have to replace them, with somebody just because we won't have them available. So going into the winter transfer window, I say at least one winger and one mid, considering some of the injured guys that we're getting back. What about you?
I think January clubs are going to pull our pants down, if I'm honest, because they know how desperate we are. And we know that Liverpool don't really like to spend too much money. If they can help it, they'll strike a deal if there's one to be had, like we did see with Luis Diaz and like we have seen with Nunez. But I think you're very optimistic and thinking we'll get that in January. I think that will come in the summer. Perhaps a midfielder in January because it is desperate. Maybe City could do us a favour by knocking out Dortmund, beating them tonight. And maybe Jude comes in January because I think that's the only way we're going to get Bellingham, because if it goes to a bidding war in the summer, every club is going to put their name in and every club can offer probably more than what we can. And Dortmund would go, we'll take you 100 million, but I'd rather have 150 million from Madrid or the 180 from Paris Saint-Germain. And that's how business works. You can't blame them for that. That's the beauty with release clauses. But I think I've always said this: what happens when Salah does finally get injured for a long period of time? That drop off, as I mentioned, is severe, and you do now need 2 11s, or certainly close to that, to win the league, or at least players who can swap around. I can't recall seeing anyone play on the right and actually make an impact. Yes, Elliot could play there. That's obviously where he applied his trade. But what happens when Salah does get injured eventually? Hopefully he doesn't. I think that you need another versatile forward, someone who can play through the middle, because Jota can play through the middle. Diaz, we've seen a couple of times play through the middle as well. If Nunez does go down in the summer, you're looking at Firmino going, Keita going, and Ox going all on a free. That's if they don't obviously sign an extension. So there's 3 players right there. I still think you need a backup for Trent, because I like Gomez in the right back. In fact, I think I prefer Gomez in the right back position, in which case then you need a centre-back then. You need to always have 4 centre-backs, I think, in a squad. You've got the cover there for the left-hand side, so that's hopefully fine. Milner, though, played well on the right-hand side, but again, 36. How long do we have to rely on James Milner for? Bless his little heart, or big heart. He's running into the ground. So another forward would be nice. I'm talking about next summer now. Another forward, certainly a couple of midfielders and somebody in defence, I think. But again, they're all 4 players who've got to make an impact. I'm not talking about Calvin Ramsey. I'm not talking about somebody who's going to come in 3 months' time and start fighting. You need that immediate impact, like a Luis Diaz had, to hit the ground running, to even elevate Liverpool anywhere near, the title challenge, and also still be lucky with injuries.
You need an actual starter to come in and either be a starter or quality enough to replace somebody in that starting 11, and not shop in the prospect category as, perhaps a Carvalho or Calvin Ramsey would be considered.
Yeah. I mean, the time for bargain basement or Moneyball now, I think, is over, because Liverpool can't afford to do that. Liverpool now, we're saying, perhaps playing catch up. Manchester United look to be rebuilding. I don't know what the rumours are with Michael Edwards apparently going there. That's only going to be good news for Manchester United, though. And we know that they do say what you want about the Glazers. I know they might be difficult to work with, but they still splash the cash. They'll still back Michael Edwards £250 million every single summer or transfer window if it's going to make them popular with the fans. Chelsea, we've seen, obviously, under Todd Burley, he's going to spend the money there. City will always continue to spend. And Newcastle, richest club in the world, are going to continue to build. And Eddie Howe is decent. He's a good manager, as much as it pains me to say. Like, he is. He's all of his transfers who have come in, they've looked really good. I know Isak is still on, the jury's out for an unfortunate injury, but again, he still looks a good signing. So that's not to mention Arsenal, who look a miles better team already, and Spurs, who look slightly more secure under Conte. He looked a bit frustrated the other day, but again, they've spent money. It's football's changed. We can't just, unfortunately, bring players from the academy or look at the championship strikers or championship left backs anymore. Times have changed. Liverpool are going to have to start spending, otherwise we're going to get left behind.
Yeah, I definitely think we're in catch-up mode at this point, and unfortunately, unless we do make moves, our players don't have the legs to catch up. All right. So taking again another look at the Ajax match tomorrow. I want to toss it out there as far as result predictions there. I'll go ahead over to you, Richie, for your prediction for tomorrow's game.
Oh, I can't do it. Do you know what? It genuinely wouldn't surprise me if we lost and we had to beat Napoli on the final day, just pure spirit, like pure Anfield spirit, and we still do it. But I think Liverpool they're coming off the back of two really good wins against City and West Ham. They had a slip up against Forest. They were in a worse position last time, and we still managed to beat Ajax. So I think we'll probably scrape it. I just pray for no more injuries. I think that's a big thing. I think it might be 2-1 Liverpool. And again, that would send Liverpool through to the knockout stages, and then that's job done.
All right, awesome prediction there. 2-1 says Richie. What about you, Dan? It's 2-1 to Liverpool, says Richie. What about you, Dan?
All right, so I don't want to look in here. What was the result last time we faced Ajax? We beat them how much?
We won by a goal, and I think 90-something minute with Matip scoring a header.
I was going to say that. I was like, we won last time we played, but we didn't win comfortably, if I'm not wrong. So just like Richie said, I wouldn't be surprised, not if we lose. I don't think we're going to lose, but I wouldn't be surprised if we draw this game. Obviously, I think based on the group stage and the results, I believe a draw will get us into the next round easily. But again, man, I'm hoping that the comeback of Mr. Ibrahima Konate and hopefully Thiago being back from his ear infection, because an ear infection does prevent you from training, but does not prevent you from playing once you're recovered, right? So my guess, I don't know, he's been out for like a week or two. My guess, if he's back tomorrow, or it was just as a prevention that he wasn't in training, and he can still play, or he could still be in the squad. I'm still very hopeful, to see Thiago and Konate in the lineup and getting a 2-1 score, 2-1 maybe.
So a repeat of our last match against Ajax, 2-1 to Liverpool. All right, 2-2-1s there. All right, I think I'll go with scraping a 1-0 win tomorrow with Liverpool. Hopefully keep a clean sheet. For Alisson, poor guy, has been, unfortunately, our hero, our wall there, and has saved us countless times already. So hopefully we keep them at bay, and like we did at Anfield, pretty much kind of control the match and come out of there with a 1-0 win to push us through to the Champions League knockout stages there.
Rigo, so how likely, and obviously Richie as well, if we win tomorrow by any chance, how likely are we to also win in the next round? So not in the group stage, in the next round, assuming we face, I don't know, maybe the likes of a not Napoli, or like a Chelsea, or like a Real Madrid, or what do you, or a Juventus? I don't know. What do you guys think is our likeliness of going through if we go through the next round?
I'll go first. I think we have a good a chance as any. Klopp knows how to manage a squad in the tournament. If we're able to field a fit squad, well, as fit as possible with the quality players that we do have, I think we're able to progress. Unless we play Real Madrid. And if that's the case, we play Real Madrid, we might as well just cancel it, because we haven't seen to jump that hurdle in either two finals or the knockout stages a couple of seasons back.
Richie? Oh, by the way, so as things stand, the teams that are going to go to the next round will be like Porto, Bayern Munich, Inter Milan, Club Brugge, Spurs, Marseille, Chelsea, Salzburg, Real Madrid, Leipzig, Man City, Dortmund, and Benfica and PSG. How likely do you think, Richie, it is that we can beat any of these teams in the next round?
Well, let's take the tables as they are. Obviously, if we come second, then obviously we'll be playing one of the first seeds. Obviously, we can't play Napoli. Club Brugge, I think, would be our kindest draw. Up against Simon again once more. I think that will probably be our kindest draw, if I'm honest. Bayern Munich, no. If Tottenham obviously top their group, now this Group D, is wide open because you've got Spurs on 7, Marseille and Sporting on 6, and Frankfurt on 4. So that's wide open. I'll take any of those teams, including Spurs, but obviously we can't play Spurs because you don't pair up with your national allegiances the first round. Marseille, Sporting or Frankfurt, absolutely take that all day. Can't play Chelsea. Looks like they're going to top their group. Real Madrid or Leipzig. It's probably going to be Madrid, although at the minute Madrid are losing 1-0. Leipzig are actually beating them. I'll take Leipzig. Man City we can't play. I think they'll top the group. They're currently 0-0 with Dortmund. 0-0. And Benfica, PSG. Benfica are currently beating Juventus. Juventus look like they're going out. They've actually only got 1 win. They're only on 3 points. So it looks like it'll be out of Benfica and PSG. Been interesting one, that Benfica or PSG, to be fair. So it depends on the draw. But also remember that, Champions League's not going to be back until the new year. We'll have a lot of our players back as well. So yeah, and Klopp and knockout football goes hand in hand. It's like a match made in heaven, that. So I'll take anybody. I'd love us to draw Madrid and beat them. That would be the ultimate. It used to be like, Barcelona. I always wanted to draw Barcelona and beat them. Now it's Madrid, but they just look fantastic. Madrid look unreal. So
Federico Valverde, holy smokes, man, what a guy!
Yeah, and Vinicius Jr. I never want to see Vinicius against Trent again. So.
Yeah, that's
supposedly Rudiger is also like doing really well despite his face injury, wherever it happened.
Yeah, horrific.
Scary.
It looks like Kano from Mortal Kombat there.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, bless him. But yeah, he's been doing well. But yeah, I wouldn't fancy Madrid or Bayern. I think the rest are there for the taking, if I'm honest. Again, because we can't play the English clubs. I wouldn't want to play Man City that early on. I think if you played Man City in a semi-final, I think you'd have a better chance because the pressure, I think, is there still for Pep, and it's still there for those Manchester City players as well. So I wouldn't fancy them over 2 legs early, but perhaps late.
What about just going with our history of acquiring players that we faced in the Champions League? I wouldn't mind facing Borussia Dortmund, just on the off chance we might grab a player or two off of their squad.
Oh, man. The Shakhtar Donetsk winger, Mikhailo Mudryk, that everybody's talking about. But back to Richie's point that he was mentioning a few minutes back, I don't think we're in a position where we should go for either young or players from a weaker league because it's too much of a gamble at this point. I think we need to go for a top winger. But of course, I would love to have Mudryk in. But at this point, if we're looking for someone at that front line option, you need a guarantee goal scorer, the likes of Cody Gakpo, who is like 22, 23, captain, scoring goals left and right, assists. He can play anywhere in that front line. And yes, the Eredivisie is like a very iffy league to get player stuff. You never know what you're going to get. But so far, some really crazy talents have come out of there. But yeah, we need someone that can guarantee us goals.
I double dip right there in PSV, pick up Gakpo and Sangare and bring them both over.
Sangare, oh my God. Yes.
Would you rate Anthony of Manchester United higher than Gakpo?
I wouldn't.
I would honestly, only because I've been watching Anthony for the last 2 years, and you can tell this guy is just on another level. Obviously, he's struggling in the Premier League right now. He'll come up with a few bits of magic here and there, but trust me, when that guy is up to settled in, it's in a different level right now. Gakpo, he's been doing it now for 2-3 seasons, but again, it's man, I don't know. Like when I've been watching him, I see talent, but I just cannot compare it to what I see from from Anthony. He reminds me a lot of Ronaldinho, but he's not as efficient as Ronaldinho was. Ronaldinho was impossible to stop. Anthony, he's still young. You can see a few mistakes here and there.
So on that recommend, you wouldn't get Gakpo then because you want someone to make an immediate impact. And I suppose if Anthony's not come in and done that, then Gakpo wouldn't be that person.
I thought you meant like just who is the better player between Anthony and Gakpo.
Yeah,
but I think they're both top talents.
I tell you,
not doing so bad at Man U. I think he's
he's okay. He's
third highest rated player behind Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, he's doing okay. I tell you, someone who's just gone. I was going to say someone who's just slotted for RB Leipzig, who I'd have in a heartbeat, Nkunku, has scored again against Madrid to make it 2-0 to Leipzig. So again,
Timo Werner.
He's any,
No, I'm kidding.
Nkunku is a dream. I think he's probably likely to go to Chelsea though, by the looks of it.
On this though, Kimpachi, the Lobotka, the defensive midfielder from Napoli, I think that is. Supposedly he will be signing an extension next month. It's just not official, but the rumors are there from Andrea Lo Sapia, who's a journalist that was breaking the Divock Origi to Milan News, so it's a very reliable guy. I think it's worth mentioning only the fact that we're looking for a midfielder, and if any midfielder is out there that I think that we should get is Frankie De Jong. But yeah, Rigo, I know we've been going on for a while, but this is pretty intense having Richie back. So entertaining.
Yeah, was that a question as far as what midfielder I'd want?
Frankie De Jong.
Okay, you want Frankie. Richie wants Nkunku.
Well, if we're talking midfielder, Lobotka is he'll be 28 pretty soon. So it's probably not the best one, if I'm honest. But Frankie would be absolutely ideal. I don't know what his wage demands would be. Because we know that it was on extortionate amounts at Barcelona, or wasn't, depending on what you want to look into. I mean, still there's only Bellingham, but the likes of Barella won't want to leave, and it's always the same names that we keep on discussing, and that's because there is at the moment quality. There is a big gap. There is a big gap in quality of midfielders. We thought that we had one lined up in Tchouaméni before Kylian Mbappe signed his extension at PSG and blew that transfer to Madrid out of the water.
Yeah, I was already
100 million euros.
I was about to order my Tchouaméni jersey right leading into the summer, like thinking, all right, Mbappe is going to Real Madrid. We have a clear path to who I call the Kaiju Conte. And boom, they completely blew that out of the water. But
and even more annoying is that Mbappe doesn't want to stay there anymore. Mbappe wants to go now again, so it's even more annoying. But Barella's not leaving Inter. Barella's not leaving Inter for anything, and he loves no money unless he's going to a Bayern Munich or
Real Madrid.
Or dare I say AC Milan, depending on where they finish as well this season. Although I can't really see it. And De Jong would be massively on his wage structure, because we've seen how difficult it was for the best player in the world in Mo Salah to get any sort of real money that the top of the teams can play. So, yeah, it looks like I don't know. I just don't know anymore. I try to be optimistic, but then we get an Arthur Melo in.
We'll see. I just know something needs to happen January 1st, 2023 with immediacy. But
a player that Rigo is desperate for getting, I feel like I'm going to jump on the train now. Moussa Diaby. Like Richie was saying, we now need like top talents up front that can compete against the front line. I was against it. I was telling Rigo, I was like, it's going to be too expensive, this and that. But at this point, man, we just need players that can for sure perform at the top level. I will go for Diaby. And in fact, if not you guys, but like if in general, if people want us to go to the next level, bring in Mbappe. Even if it's impossible, we need a top marquee signing that can challenge up front and score goals. I'm okay with the fact that we didn't bring Erling Haaland only because of their league wage demands. I think like they're paying 900,000 a week, right?
But that's a drop in the bucket to what Mbappe is making.
Is he?
Yeah, his contract over 3 years is like 650 million. Plus, he's also like sporting director, and he's on corners, and he's on penalties, and he's just basically changes all the music in the dressing room. He's the DJ, and he gets to pick what socks people wear. He's just in charge of the club, essentially.
This is perfect clip to clip and put on Twitter.
Yeah, he's getting paid the world and still isn't happy. And you have Messi, the best player of all time, on your squad, and you're still supposedly complaining about it. Yeah, I don't know if I'd ever, even if it is realistic, how much we'd want him in, obviously. But just going back to your points there, I know there's plenty of transfer targets that we wish we could bring along. But from here to January and perhaps June is a long, long time. But we have to kind of make do with what we got for the time being. So with that, let's root on our Reds for tomorrow. Game time is 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. UK time. I hope all of you are able to watch it and cheer us along as we cement our spot into the Champions League knockout stages. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Richie. I hope you all have a great one. Take care.